In a huge surprise to me, and a serious blow to the Trump White House, the US Senate has passed a bipartisan resolution to withdraw American support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen. Now, this vote was 63 to 37, meaning every Democrat voted for it, and even 14 Republicans voted for it. Now, it was unfortunately short of the 67 votes needed to override a Trump veto, but this is really just the first step in this process. So let me first show you the case that Bernie made on the Senate floor.
Mr. President, in March of 2015, under the leadership of Mohammed bin Salman, who was then the Saudi defense minister and is now, of course, the crown prince, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates intervened in Yemen's ongoing civil war. As a result of that Saudi intervention, Yemen is now experiencing the worst humanitarian disaster in the world. And it is absolutely imperative that we call attention to the inhumane and horrific situation that is now impacting the people of Yemen, a small nation of 28 million people, one of the poorest countries on earth. Mr. President, according to the United Nations, Yemen is at risk of the most severe famine in more than 100 years, with some 14 million people, about half of that country's population, facing starvation. Already as a result of this terrible war, according to the Save the Children organization, some 85,000 children in Yemen have starved to death over the last several years. The fact is that the United States, with relatively little media attention, has been Saudi Arabia's partner in this horrific war. We have been providing the bombs that the Saudi-led coalition is using. We have been refueling their planes before they drop those bombs, and we have been assisting with intelligence. In too many cases, our weapons are being used to kill civilians. In August, as many will remember, it was an American-made bomb that obliterated a school bus full of young boys, killing dozens and wounding many more.
So that was just a couple short clips from Bernie's 15 minutes on the floor discussing why it was so important to vote for this measure. And of course, as I told you, it passed. So let me show you some reaction for that. So this is journalist Ben Norton. He tweeted out saying, "Incredible. I've reported on this story for nearly 4 years. Congress members have tried several times in the past few years to pass legislation to force an end to the US-Saudi war on Yemen, with no success. Now, in a historic vote, the Senate finally just voted to advance the bill." And Kate Kaiser, policy director for Win Without War, reacted saying, "We won. 63 senators just voted to defy Trump and advance SJ Res 54 to end U.S. support for the Saudi and UAE war in Yemen. It's about time, and thanks to the tireless efforts of Senator Sanders, Chris Murphy, Senator Mike Lee, on to the next vote because Yemen can't wait." Now, as they showed you here, this was a huge shock. So I was on Twitter when this passed, and it was a story that was blowing up. A lot of people just did not expect, especially after the vote that happened, I believe in March, that voted against this. This time they voted for it, including, as I said, many Republicans. Now, Bernie put out a response video after it did pass, talking about what this now means.
Let me thank all of the people at the grassroots level throughout our country who helped us today win a major vote on the path toward ending U.S. involvement in the war in Yemen. But let me caution everybody, given the extremely obscure and complicated rules of the United States Senate, this fight is far from over. What we won this afternoon was a vote to discharge our resolution out of the Foreign Relations Committee. And that was a major, major victory. But what we have got to do is continue our effort to make sure that we end up winning the resolution to proceed, to go forward. And then finally, we have got to win final passage on this legislation. And what we did today was of enormous significance. This is a really important step forward. It's not the President of the United States who decides whether we get into a war in Yemen or anybody else, anyplace else. Constitution, Article 1 of the Constitution is very clear. It is the Congress. So what this resolution does for the first time is it says Congress is going to take back its constitutional responsibility for engaging in war. So this is a very, very big deal. But we have got to continue going forward together. I wish I could tell you exactly when the next votes on this resolution will be. That's something that is being worked on right now in the Senate. As you may know, any one senator can object to a unanimous consent and prevent us from going forward in a way that we would like to.
So Bernie mentions here that this is really just the first step and there's a lot more to do. I do want to mention that this Saudi-led war in Yemen started under Obama, with Obama's support. So, this is not a Trump administration issue alone. It is something that they have continued to support. But, to have what was supposed to be a progressive president when he ran in 2008, to have his administration support this Saudi-led war in Yemen, and now have handed it off to the Trump administration, there is blame to go around here. So it's important to understand as well that Trump can veto anything that doesn't have 2/3 majority support. So, 63 votes is great, but if they want to continue and actually end this support, they're going to have to get the supermajority that they need. Now, what Republicans voted against this? So I have an example of at least a few for maybe why they voted or they chose to vote against this resolution. So this from Al Jazeera. At least 5 of the 37 Republican senators who voted against advancing a resolution limiting the U.S.'s involvement in the war in Yemen have received campaign contributions from pro-Saudi lobbying groups. Roy Blunt, John Boozman, Richard Burr, Mike Crapo, that's a terrible name, and Tim Scott all received financial contributions from firms representing Saudi interests between 2016 and 2017, according to a recent investigation by the Center for International Policy. All 5 Republicans voted on Wednesday against advancing the resolution, which, if passed, would force the U.S. to limit its support for the Saudi-UAE war in Yemen. So these contributions are at least part of the equation for why some of these Republicans voted against this measure. But also, it's just the whole mindset of Washington. It's always pro-war, pro-defense contractors, pro-selling weapons to anybody that will buy them. And on top of that, you have senators that have this authoritarian mindset where whatever their supreme leader, Donald Trump, tells them to do, they're going to do it. So because the White House is for continuing the support of this Saudi-led war in Yemen, then they're going to listen to their supreme leader because their voters also listen to the supreme leader. And why question anybody? Why question power at all? These fucking dipshits bow to power every time. They bow to power and they bow to money. All to save their own space in Washington. It's fucking gross. But that's the system that Americans currently live in. And until you get these idiots out of there, there's going to continue being support for these sorts of wars or these sorts of coalitions. Now, that said, I don't want to take away from the fact that this is still clearly a good move, a move in the right direction. This is something that, as I said, I would not expect to have happened. So I don't want to be too pessimistic here. But I also want people to understand that this is still a serious battle. And it's only a serious battle because of the corruption and the authoritarian mindset in Washington.